How's it going, everyone? Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. Welcome to this classic movie review. This is my review of a comedy classic from 1974, Blazing Saddles. This movie came to us from the mind of the great Mel Brooks, one of the greatest comedian slash actors slash directors of all time. This man gave us movies like The Producers, Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, which is the spoof of Hitchcock films, History of the World Part 1, and recently Part 2, which I think is on Hulu as of recently. He also made movies like Dracula Dead and Loving It, Spaceballs, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and one of my favorite comedies from the early 1990s, Life Stinks, in which he stars in. He's one of the great funny people that ever lived, in my opinion, and this movie is just another great notch on his belt. Blazing Saddles is a very trailblazing film that rubs some people the wrong way, I think, because I think some people aren't aware that this movie doesn't intend to be offensive, yet, because of the nature of the comedy, is going to be offensive to certain people. But this movie is definitely a satire and a spoof, just for the reason that this is a mid 70s film. A lot of people nowadays aren't going to get certain jokes because you kind of had to be around back then, or at least know of certain pop culture things from back then in order to get certain jokes. Like one of the characters in this movie, played by the great Harvey Korman, his name is Hedley Lamar. That name is kind of a riff on an actual celebrity from back in the day, like from the 40s and 50s, Hedy Lamar. And so just the similarity of that name being so similar to a real person, makes for some fun jokes throughout the movie. In my opinion, this is one of the best Mel Brooks comedies, and not only did he direct this film, he also had a hand in the screenplay, as well as four other individuals, one of them being the great Richard Pryor, who was asked by Mel Brooks to come on board and contribute to this movie. And you can definitely feel Richard Pryor's touch and comedic sense all throughout this movie. It really does add a nice flavor to it. This movie stars Cleavon Little as the character of Bart, a part that I understand was offered to Richard Pryor himself, but he turned it down and he decided to be a writer on the film instead. And I think Cleavon Little does a great job in this role. He isn't an actor that a lot of people today would be familiar with, unless you were around back then and watched movies back in the day. Then you might be familiar with this guy's work since he was in movies like the 1971 film Vanishing Point. He appeared in the two Chevy Chase Fletch films, and I think he was also in Once Bitten, a movie in 1985 that has Jim Carrey in it, one of his early roles. So at the beginning of the film, we meet Cleavon Little's character Bart for the first time as we see him as a slave. It's 1874 in the Old West, and there is a town called Rockridge in which there are some officials and corrupt politicians that want to see this town go under for their own personal gain. And when Bart does something that gets him in trouble and he's scheduled for a hanging, uh, Hedley Lamar, who is one of those corrupt officials, that's that name that I mentioned earlier, and they figure if we got somebody who was black sheriff, then he would not last too long, and so they would be able to go with their plans a little quicker as far as making sure that the town of Rockridge doesn't succeed. One of the important aspects in the movie is the racism that happens in the movie. And I know it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, and it's going to turn off many viewers, especially modern day viewers. But the racism in the movie isn't something that the filmmakers are condoning, it's not something that they're promoting, it's something that they're showcasing as satirical, and they're actually making fun of the people that are racist. So I think it's necessary in order to tell this kind of story because our main character, you do see the way he's kind of affected by it in certain scenes, and so you do get the sense that the things that he's going through, it's ugly, it's kind of disturbing. At the same time, it's necessary for you to sympathize with the character and to understand that it's wrong ultimately. Watching this movie, you'll notice that in the first act of the film, you'll hear the N-word quite a bit, and it's usually used towards Bart's character. And because this is a comedy, it can feel very, very ugly at times and a little uncomfortable. And I think that's the point. I think the whole point is to kind of feel like you're in Bart's shoes. And if you rewatch the film, you'll notice that they usually give that dialogue to the more dumber and ignorant characters in the movie, which, is more than a few. But I think that's the overall message, and I think that was the intent to begin with. And so On that basis, the movie really does succeed on that level. The great Gene Wilder is also in this film as the character of Jim. And when Bart meets him for the first time, when he takes over as sheriff, he comes to his new sheriff's office, and Jim is in a cell and he is upside down. And there's a great moment where he's starting to wake up from being asleep and he notices Bart for the first time. And there's great moments and exchanges of dialogue between these two, and they quickly become instant friends. And there is a scene where Bart is on the street, interacts with an older lady, and she calls him the N word. And in the next scene, Jim is kind of counseling Bart, and it's a very tender and sweet moment between these two. And he kind of mentions that, these people, they're very simple people, they're people of the land. And he kind of goes on, and he kind of caps it off with, they're just morons, they're idiots. And it's a great moment because it really does feel genuine when Bart's eyes kind of water up a bit and then he starts to smile. That moment always kind of warms me up inside. And even though this is a funny film and it's very satirical, it also has quite a bit of heart because of a moment like that. The great Madeline Kahn is also in this film as the character of Lily von Stupp. It's a little Yiddish humor for you there. And she's also in other great Mel Brooks comedies. I believe she also appeared in High Anxiety and History of the World Part 1. She was in Young Frankenstein. She was terrific in 1985's Clue, one of my favorite parts that she's ever been in. And here she is hired by Hedley Lamar to seduce Bart, the new sheriff of Rock Ridge, kind of meant to break his heart and send him out of town with his tail between his legs, which doesn't exactly pan out the way she thinks it's going to or the way Hedley thought it was going to. But hilarious results at the end of that scene. I also have to mention a great character actor from back in the day known as Slim Pickens, who is in the role of Taggart in this movie. And he's hilarious as Taggart. I think I've seen him in other movies like One Eyed Jacks, starring Marlon Brando, a great western that I will get to on this channel because it's one of my favorite films. And I believe he was also in Doctor Strangelove, great comedy from the great Stanley Kubrick. And so this guy does have experience in westerns, which is probably why he was in this. Because I think he was also in quite a few westerns. He was also in The Cowboys with John Wayne. But having western film experience and comedy film experience, he was perfect for the part of Taggart. He's hilarious in that role. It's a small role, but very very funny. He has some funny scenes with Hedley Lamar's character. Because this is a 70s comedy, this movie might feel a bit dated for some people, especially a lot of people of, modern day. And because of that, the comedy in this movie is not going to be for everybody, especially because of the racism in the film. But as you watch the movie, you got to realize this movie isn't trying to be racist, it's only depicting racism. And it's doing it in a negative light. And so, to me, that's kind of a positive on the film. And the comedy, like I said, it's not gonna be for everybody. You kind of have to have a thick skin for some of the stuff in this movie. I do consider this a four-star classic. This is one of the greatest comedies ever made, as far as I'm concerned. And I know I'm not alone in that view. This movie has been highly regarded for many decades as one of the funniest movies ever made. And that's not going to be the opinion of a lot of people that are going to watch this, I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of people are going to watch this and think, yeah, maybe that's not for me. But, this is from a different school and from a different time. And so, if you don't like it, not your thing, I respect it. But for people that want to see what, a comedy Western would be like from the 1970s, particularly 1974, in the style of a Mel Brooks spoof and a Western at that, this is definitely a fun time to be had. This is a movie that can be found on HBO Max. I come across it there once or twice, since I'm one of those people that as soon as I see it, I gotta click on it because it's one of my favorite films. But usually, if I'm gonna watch the movie in its entirety, I gotta put on the Blu-ray because I'm a physical media kind of guy. Like I'm always saying, the hard copies are out there. This is my copy of the Blu-ray of Blazing Saddles. This is genuinely a funny film. This is a hilarious movie that holds no punches, pulls no punches, I mean. And so, yeah, Blazing Saddles from 1974. It's a freaking hilarious time. As you can see on the cover, we got our main character Bart there on his horse, on his saddle, on a blazing saddle. And yeah, that's Bill Brooks there. I think he played a couple of different small parts in this movie. And Looks like an Indian chief there. But this is one of those movies that is a classic from the 70s. Highly recommend it. Check it out. Thank you all very much for watching this classic movie review. I very much appreciate it. If you're into classic movies, if you're into this kind of deal, you're new to the channel, hit the bell, subscribe. You'll get notifications on more classic movie reviews coming to you very soon. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate you. And look out for the next classic movie review. Please remember to comment, share, and don't forget to like if you like the video. And just thanks for watching. Everybody take care of each other. God bless. Peace out. Be nice.